Hello, family members. Hope you're having a nice day today. I want to talk to you today about Ben Shapiro, of all people, and something that he said that I just can't get out of my head, and I got to talk about it. So let's get into it. Uh, I do want to mention I am really close to a subscriber milestone, so if you're not subscribed and you're watching, I would appreciate it. A like, anything. I'm 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 not. I am a YouTuber. All the things that YouTubers like, I like. Anyway, Ben Shapiro said he was responding. It's in a video where he's like going off on. I can't even remember some Christian Democrat was on CNN and said that Jesus, not Jesus. I mean, yes, Jesus, but not specifically. He said God was non-binary, and I guess Ben Shapiro had to make a whole video about that. That kind of like how Ben Shapiro's comment that he made in this video stuck in my brain, and he couldn't get it. I couldn't get it out, and I had to talk about it. He had the same experience apparently with some Democrat guy saying that, and he didn't like it. And I want to preface this discussion by saying I am not transgender. I am binary. I am fully binary. I'm a woman. Was born a woman, always identified as a woman, happy in my gender, not a problem for me. I am not saying this from any sort of I am non-binary and thus I know what it's like to be non-binary perspective. This is a strictly cisgender woman's perspective, non-transgender woman's perspective, if you don't like the word cis. Non-trans, I'll say even. I am also, though, somebody who has extensive education in human anatomy. I have a degree in biology and a doctor of chiropractic degree, meaning that I did literal years of human anatomy, including gross anatomy, in labs with cadavers. Like, I know what people look like on the inside. Like, I know about human bodies, how they develop from the embryonic level. I know exactly we had to go through. At this point, this is when this tissue develops, all the way through embryological development. So I'm better informed than most about human anatomy, although I am not a practicing chiropractor. I just have the degree and the education and everything in my brain. So, all right. What Ben Shapiro said that got in my brain and I can't get it out is he believes that you can't say God is non-binary because non-binary means that you're some sort of thing in between being a woman and being a man. This is a very bad misunderstanding of what the term non-binary means. Non-binary does not mean that you're something that's in between being a man and a woman. It means that you're not a man, and it means you're not a woman. That's all it means. It's right there in the term. You're not one of the two binary genders, male and female. So this Democrat guy that said God is non-binary was right, and Ben was wrong. Because in his mind, there's some additional connotation to what being non-binary is, beyond what it just literally means, not binary. And they literally read the scripture in the clip where they said that God is, God is not a man or a woman. He's, beyond that. He's God. He's, deity. You couldn't describe him the same thing as being a man and a woman. People use he as the pronoun for him, but that's a subjective thing, even by the Bible's own standards, as it's literally written. Okay? So Ben got this like bone stuck in his craw over someone using the term non-binary appropriately to describe God, because Ben was wrong about the term non-binary. And rather than think maybe there is more to the definition, or the definition of non-binary isn't quite what I think it is, because what he's saying doesn't match what I think non-binary should mean, he just assumed that guy was wrong. And I just think that's wild. Ben, a binary person, a cisgender male who's not non-binary, doesn't know anything about being non-binary, clearly. Someone else was using the term, and then he tells them that they're wrong and how they're using the term, when he's showing that he doesn't understand it. He just does not question that his understanding of the terminology could be wrong, and that's why the statement seems so bizarre to him. And then Ben, who is Jewish, mind you, not Christian, calls into question the Christian faith of the Christian guy, the Christian Democrat guy that was in the clip. Like, he's going to tell Christians how to be Christian when he's Jewish. He's a cisgender man trying to say define what non-binary is, and is wrong. And he's a Jewish man trying to tell Christian people how to be Christian. And by the way, as a Christian, I think he is wrong. I don't think that the way that he defines Christianity is accurate. I think when he says Christian, he means conservative Christian, and that's not the same thing as being Christian. It's a different religion, honestly, at this point. They worship money. They have false idols. There's a gold statue of of Donald Trump, and they had a whole religious figure there for the dedication. Like, conservative Christianity and Christianity are becoming completely different things. Completely different religions with completely different rules, completely different priorities. And so, as an actual Christian who follows the words of Jesus and grew up in Methodist church, actually knows what it means to be a Christian, I just find it so absolutely bizarre to see a Jewish man try to define Christianity in the way that he thinks it ought to be defined, when it doesn't have anything that pertains to him. That's such a weird, false confidence that you understand things you don't understand. I just find it so strange when people tumble into conversations about things they don't understand, that are far beyond their ability to understand. When you instead of, you're used to maybe Queer Discourse 101, and you've somehow fallen into Queer Discourse 502 or something, where it's extremely advanced and niche, and there's been a lot of discourse and background built up to get to where we are. It's so bizarre to see someone like Ben, who doesn't know anything about queer discourse, try to say how to use the term non-binary correctly. We as queer people for a long time were marginalized and isolated, and didn't have the ability to congregate and create terminology for ourselves. If you look at any time there's been queer movements in the past, that's when terms start being created, and then oftentimes are misapplied or buried by mainstream people. The original term that would have been used to describe being non-binary in, say, the 70s would have been genderqueer. And at some point, the terminology, although genderqueer and non-binary aren't quite the same, there's a great deal of overlap. And a lot of times when people are engaging in queer discourse, where they say non-binary now, they would have in, say, the 70s or 80s said genderqueer. And non-binary, in a way, I think using that term more predominantly was a way of trying to soften the language, kind of desexualize it in a way, because there's sort of a queer has a sexual connotation to it, which it really doesn't need to have. It's just talking about people's identities, not their actions. And even though people try to make it more accessible to people outside of the conversation, still you get people like Ben willfully misunderstanding and refusing to be corrected when there's clear evidence that he is wrong in the way that he's characterizing something. I just find that so frustrating, you know? Recently, one of my girlfriends and I have been having a discussion about our prior breakup of sorts. This was our relationship really got established in the mid to late aughties. And that's what I spent a lot of my time in like 2008, 2009, 2010 doing, was hanging out with her and her husband and friends and things like that. She's a polyamorous woman. And we, at the time, just didn't have language for our relationship, what it was. What it was, if we had known how to describe it, was a queer platonic relationship. It's something a term that hasn't even existed for 20 years yet, you know? And we were, in the time that we were in that relationship, that word didn't exist. So we didn't have the verbiage to be able to understand what our relationship was and how to make sure that it was healthy and strong. And so when she started going through stress in her life, it was really hard for me to assert myself and my needs as essentially her queer platonic partner in all but name, because I just didn't literally have that name to use. At that time in my life, the way I would have identified myself was practically asexual, because I didn't know what to call myself. I wasn't really asexual. I'm aegosexual. That's another term that didn't exist yet, that hadn't been created until a few years later. And that's when I was like 36 and I found that term finally, it like changed my life. Knowing that there were other people out there that were like me, that felt that disconnect from like their attraction. You feel the attraction, but you don't want to necessarily be hands-on, right? And I didn't know how to explain that, and I didn't know how to explain that I was aromantic. Although that term did exist then, I didn't know it. And so I didn't understand how to describe myself as someone who wanted to have deep personal relationships but didn't want them to be romantic and didn't want them to be hands-on sexual. And I fell into a queer platonic relationship with my girlfriend. And then when she started going through tough times, what basically happened was she would feel a little bit of a disconnect from me, and I would feel that disconnect and I would withdraw, and I wouldn't assert myself, and I wouldn't say I missed her and I needed her and I wanted her in my life. I just kind of sat alone at home. I didn't feel like, as a friend, I had any right to demand anything of her. If I had been able to call myself her queer platonic partner, maybe I could have done things differently. And maybe our relationship wouldn't have fallen apart, but it did. And it was the worst breakup I ever had in my life. I've never had a breakup. Anything. It just devastated me. I moved away almost to another state. Like when I started working in my new city, I sat in my break room, looked across the river and saw Ohio. I got as far away from her as I could and still be in the state of West Virginia, basically. And it wasn't until many, many years later, and a lot of healing and growing on both of our parts, that we came back together. And it wasn't until many years after that that I realized that our relationship had become what it had once been again. And we became queer platonic partners again. But I just can't even tell you the absolute hell of going through all of that and not have any terminology to explain what was happening. And honestly, it wasn't until recently, like literally today when we were discussing it, that I've gotten a lot more insight in how it actually happened, because it was so indescribable at the time. And now in retrospect, with the terminology, with understanding other people in my communities, what their experiences are like and how mine relate or don't relate to those, that I can look back in that experience and be like, I understand what happened now. If you don't use terminology for us, queer people, if you refuse to understand who we are and misunderstand who we are, that doesn't change who we are. If you try to bury these terms and make them mean something different, or make them so that people don't want to hear it, make it, taboo, it doesn't change who we are. We still are who we are. We still go through our lives as queer people, having queer relationships, whether or not we have the terminology for it. I'm living proof of that. I don't know why people like Ben Shapiro want to talk about queer issues so fervently, but have so little curiosity about what they're actually talking about. I guess it's just easier to demonize us if you don't know anything. You can fill in the blanks with whatever you think sounds scariest to your viewers. It's lazy. This man is someone who tries to push himself out there as like a learned man, a smart man, an intellectual man. But he just speaks fast and has a semi-decent vocabulary. He doesn't even know what he's talking about a lot of the time. Just because words are long doesn't mean that he's using them correctly when he uses them. He might sound smart if you're not paying any attention. But when you pay attention, you realize he just doesn't care. He's talking to fill space. And what he says doesn't mean anything. You can't trust anything he says. He's like human chat GPT. He's going to tell his viewers what he thinks that they want to hear, and they're going to make them do what he wants and keep paying attention to him. And he doesn't seem to notice or care that that's not working. People aren't paying attention to him. And if they're not paying attention to him, they're definitely not going to do what he wants. Earlier today, I was watching the Noah Samson live stream. I don't know if you're watching that this weekend, but Noah Samson, a kind of small YouTuber, is being sued by Ethan Klein, their large podcaster, YouTuber guy, over some nonsense, honestly. And Noah's just trying to raise money for his legal defense. And if he doesn't need the money he raises, for whatever reason, if things get dropped or dismissed, he's going to donate to charity. So I would recommend, if you have a few minutes, go over and watch his live stream, give it a like, share, whatever, or donate if you can. It's a good cause, I think, because YouTubers shouldn't be suing each other. If you don't like somebody's take, you don't sue them. That's not right. Anyway, so I was watching the FD Signifier interview kind of off and on this morning, and then they brought in this guy, Bad Empanada, who I don't really know much about except for that he was on Noah's last charity live stream that he did, and caused all this drama or whatever. And my impression of the guy is that he's relatively smart, but he's so fucking arrogant, and he doesn't listen to people at all when he talks to them. He's there to say what he's there to say. And for his type, like the debate bro type, I guess that works pretty well. But it doesn't do anything for me, honestly. And so when he came on and he and FD Signifier start talking, um, I tried to listen for a while and I just couldn't, because it's just like, this guy just talks past. He's not giving other people a chance to speak. But even when they are able to get a word in edgewise, he's just completely dismissive of what they're saying. And the main point was, they were criticizing him for using certain terminology, and this bad empanada guy goes, who cares, and it's like, if they're asking you, they care. If FD Signifier criticized you for using that, he cares. Is he not anybody? Now, you could say maybe I don't think enough people care, or I don't think that is important in my message. But who cares is just so arrogant. And then he'd also repeat, nobody cares. And it's just like, yeah, they do. I'm not tone policing. I'm not saying that Bad Empanada can't say what he's saying, but it's valid criticism to say the way you present your message makes it hard for people to hear your point. And maybe he thinks that doesn't matter. That's a valid thing to say, as I think my point is more important than my tone. You could say that. That's an argument, a valid argument to make. I don't agree, but that's a valid argument. But you can't say nobody cares, because the fact that people are asking you about this means that means people care. In fact, they had to shut down the chat. It was like a subscriber-only chat, and then they had to switch it to YouTube members-only chat, because it was going just wild between, I guess, people who like Bad Empanada and people who like FD Signifier, people who like Noah Sampson, and all of them just talking past each other because the chat is going so fast. Who could read anything that anyone's even saying at that point? It's just useless. The conversation seemed useless. The chat became useless. It was just so contentious. All because of that fundamental disagreement over whether what you say and how you say it are both worthy of discussion. And I think they are. And I think we tend to forget that most people in this country are kind of normies, and they're kind of checked out, and they aren't part of all these niche discussions. And so when you're talking about things that are important and you need to have public opinion on your side, you do have to take the time to consider how you can present your message in a way that people buy into. That's why the Democratic Party is such a failure right now, is they don't focus on trying to get people to vote for them. They try to get people afraid of Republicans enough to come vote for them out of obligation. And they want you to vote against the other side, not for them. And it's just not that motivating to people to come out against something unless it's horrific. And then once the edge is off of that, you can't keep that going. That's why, Joe Biden became a one-term wonder. You can't get people to vote for you. You can't win. You can't just be the lesser of two evils. There are a lot of people who won't raise a finger to vote for a party that is just the lesser of two evils, okay? I've kind of gone off track, haven't I? Oh well, that's part of the discussion, I suppose. So yes, when people who are outside of our niche communities try to wade into these discussions, it's very important that we make sure they understand the terminology, and we have to learn to encourage people to not use terminology they don't understand. And I don't think that's that likely. So if we can't affect what other people do other than just like ask nicely, we just have to be on the lookout for these things. When you see someone making bad faith arguments about queer issues or any sort of oppressed minority issues, and you see them using terms incorrectly, if you have the ability to correct the record, do. Because a lot of times in these discussions, it's not just the person discussing and the listener involved. There are other people on the outside too. So anytime you can correct the record, that's a good thing. So, Ben Shapiro, I will say to you now, non-binary means neither man nor woman. And so therefore, God, who is neither a man nor a woman, is non-binary, and your whole video is, in fact, incorrect. Please stop trying to tell tell Christians how to be Christian, and I will promise you I will not try to tell Jewish people how to be Jewish, okay? And I especially won't tell you how to be Jewish, all right? Be Jewish however you want. And I'm going to be Christian because I believe in Jesus. Because that's what it means to be Christian. Doesn't mean that you have to be conservative. It just means you need to believe in Jesus. And, accept him as your Lord and Savior and all of that, which, that's part of the whole thing. Okay? None of that has anything to do with any sort of politics. Anyway. So, family members, I guess I will let you go. I don't have any cute animals to show you. They're all off doing whatever. It is amazing, though, to have this level of quiet. Well, let me know in the comments if it's preferable to have animal chaos or this nice little quiet thing, so I know what you all find more engaging to watch. All right, family members, have a nice day. I'll talk to you later. Bye.